He entered the house quietly as always, as if afraid to disturb the walls. The mansion, standing at the edge of an old apple orchard, had been built by her grandfather, and was soaked with voices of the past, with wind, the scent of books, dried roses in vases, and a quiet anticipation of wonder. It was a part of her family, of her roots, pain, love. It had never been his home, never. Marina stood by the window and didn't turn around. She could feel it. He had returned again, but not alone. Not in the sense of another woman. No, that would have been too obvious by now. He came back with a different face. A face she had learned to read like foreign handwriting. Hardened, confident, having claimed what was not his. He walked across the creaking floor, looking around with the expression of someone assessing property. As if checking. Had anything changed? Had anything been taken away without his knowledge? And then she said it. You have no claim to my parents' estate. It sounded like a gunshot, quiet but final. He froze, then smiled the way he could, faintly, with hurt hidden in mockery. I thought we were family, he said. Family. A word she could no longer bear from his lips. He used it like a pass. Like an anchor to keep her tied to a shore where there was no longer love. Where warmth had been replaced by expectation, obligation, and debt. She turned. She was beautiful as always, but now resolute. Ice in her gaze, a voice without tremor. She wasn't afraid anymore. Everything that had happened in the last 2 years had forged her into steel. First came her father's illness. Then her mother's death. Then long court battles over the land someone had tried to seize, citing old agreements. She had defended it all alone. He came rarely. Helped in his own way. With advice. Occasionally money. But always with the air of doing her a favor. And now he spoke of family. You were only here when it was convenient for you, she said. You didn't know my father. You kept your distance from my mother. You didn't come to my aunt's funeral. You just waited for everything to be transferred to me. Then you thought we'd sell. He stayed silent. And his silence was not an admission. It was a wait. He was still hoping. Maybe for her exhaustion. Maybe for habit. Maybe that he could once again persuade, convince, insinuate. But she no longer wavered. You never touched this land. You never plowed a single patch. You didn't carry water in the heat, didn't cry in the kitchen, didn't talk to lawyers late into the night. You didn't fix the roof when it leaked. Didn't wake in the cold when the heating failed. I did all that. He suddenly sat down. Not because he was tired, but because he understood. Her words weren't emotion. They were a verdict. Marina walked to the dresser, opened a drawer, took out a folder. Held it out. These are the documents. The house, the land, the orchard. Everything is in my name. My mother signed a will a month before she passed. My father wanted to as well, but didn't make it. I took it to court. The papers are here. This is mine. Mine by right, by blood, by pain. He didn't take it. Just glanced. Like at something slipping away. You can stay here a couple of nights, while you figure out where to go, she said. But no more. And no talk about selling. Is that clear? He nodded. She left the room. Then left the house. Walked into the orchard. Dry leaves beneath her feet, a draft of wind. The sky heavy above and silence hung thick, like lead. But for the first time in a long while she could breathe easier. The orchard was overgrown, but still her favorite place. Under the old pear tree, the bench still stood, cracked with age, its paint peeled, but the wood held strong. Just like her. She sat down, hugging her shoulders, as if shielding herself from the evening chill, but more from memory. Every path here knew her since childhood. She ran barefoot here when her grandmother called for lunch. This was where she had her first kiss, and her first tears, when the boy she trusted left and never came back. Here her father taught her how to plant an apple tree. Her mother, how to read people through their eyes. This orchard was more than land. It was living memory, and her husband had always seen it as a good asset. Marina remembered that conversation as if it were yesterday. A year ago, when her mother was still ill, and she and her husband were just beginning to drift apart. We could rent this place, he'd said, eyes on his phone. Or sell it altogether. Land is valuable. If we invest a little, we could get a good return. We could travel to Europe. Or you could finally quit work, Focus on yourself. Yourself. That meant going to a spa, buying clothes, seeing a cosmetologist. He never saw that yourself to her meant standing in this orchard with coffee at 5 a.m., breathing while the world still slept. He never understood. Back then she stayed silent. Not out of weakness, but out of fear. If she said how she really felt, there would be no way back. Now the way back had vanished on its own. In the house, he wandered from room to room, as if trying to find something to hold on to. The carved sideboard in the living room was still there, her grandmother's wedding gift. On it, a porcelain ballerina figurine. He'd always disliked it. Said it collected dust. Wanted to throw it out. She never let him. Now he just stood and looked at it. Like it's something that wasn't his anymore, and never would be. That night she didn't sleep. She listened to the old house creak. The wind rattling shutters. The soft whimpering of the old shepherd dog, Runa, behind the door. Since her mother's passing, Runa let no one near her, except Marina. And there, lying in the childhood bed, she understood. The house had held her all this time. Not her husband, not friends, not the city. The house. In the morning he left. As quietly as he came. A half-finished cup of coffee on the table. A note. Thank you for everything. I understand. She didn't believe it. He wasn't the type to understand. But she didn't throw it away. Just tucked it in a drawer. Just in case. As a memory that all of it really happened. 2 months passed. The house grew quieter, but warmer. Marina learned to hear silence again. Not as loneliness, but as music. She embroidered, read, cooked borscht by her mother's recipe. Sometimes invited her elderly neighbor Luba Ivanovna over for tea. Sometimes she sat by the fireplace and simply watched the flames. He no longer disturbed her. No calls, no letters, no lawyers. Perhaps he really had understood. In spring, she planted new apple trees. 5. One for each woman in her family, great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, aunt, and herself. She watered each with a prayer. And with gratitude. For staying. For enduring. For the house breathing again. That summer, for the first time in years, Marina felt at home. Not just physically but in spirit. The house once again smelled of pies. The garden flourished with strawberries. And in the evenings laughter wandered the paths. Her nephews now came often. She wasn't searching for comfort, she was restoring it. Rearranged furniture, beat out the rugs, changed the curtains. Even repaired the gramophone, which had sat silent in the hall since the 70s. Music played again. Old, gentle, like the touch of her grandmother's hands. One July evening, she walked through the orchard with a basket. It held cucumbers, currants, a bit of mint. Suddenly she heard footsteps. She froze. Not from fear. Just her heart clicked. The steps were familiar. He stood by the gate. The same look. But this time no claim in his eyes. Only weariness and a shadow of regret. In his hands a folder. She knew instantly, documents. He'd finalized everything. Renounced all claims. Gave it all to the notary. No scandal. No demands. I didn't come for that, he said quietly. I just wanted to see how you are. How I am. Yes. You've changed. Marina nodded. Calmly. She really had changed. Not better. Just herself. He stood a moment longer, then left. And she understood. This was the real ending. Not on paper. Human. Autumn brought rain. Mud, wet grass, leaves turned the orchard into a challenge. But she didn't complain. She worked the beds in rubber boots, laughed when she fell, scolded herself when she forgot an umbrella. Runa followed her like an old friend, and seemed at peace too. Tourists started coming to the village. Inquiries appeared. Rent a room, eat home-cooked food, join apple harvests. She hadn't planned any of it. But fate brought it, as if the house wanted to live louder again. Now, every week someone stayed. Writers, tired managers, divorced women, students, retirees, single mothers. Each had their pain. Their reason to escape the city. And each found something in her home. Some silence. Some a pie. Some understanding. And every time someone asked, "Are you here alone?" she would answer, "No. My mother's here. And my grandmother. And our whole orchard." People were surprised at first. Then they smiled.